Karen declared war on my RV, threatening to tow it by force. But what she didn't know? That eyesore was the sheriff's mobile command center. Why would anyone pick a fight with the law? It showed up just before sunrise. No sirens, no lights, just the low rumble of diesel and the soft hiss of air brakes. I parked it right along the curb next to the mailbox cluster, between lot 42T and the broken solar lamp no one ever fixed. Most people didn't even notice. The RV wasn't flashy. Matte black, clean lines, no bumper stickers, no solar panels on the roof, just tinted windows and two subtle signs on the back that read "No trespassing, federal vehicle." Small print, easy to miss. But Karen didn't miss it. At 6:03 a.m., my security feed picked up movement. Karen Thompson, in her full morning patrol getup, pink tracksuit, reflective sneakers, and a clipboard with gold initials, stormed out of her house like she was late for war. She wasn't walking, she was marching. Her sunglasses looked like something out of a spy movie, even though it was barely light out. She stopped dead in her tracks when she saw it. The RV. My RV. I watched from inside, sipping coffee. Her eyes narrowed, her nostrils flared. I swear I saw her mutter "unacceptable" like a curse word. She circled the RV once, then again, then pulled out her phone and started snapping pictures from every angle like she was building a case file. She held the phone up like a weapon, angling for maximum drama, and then, just like that, she was gone. I figured that was it. Curiosity, maybe a strongly worded email to the HOA. Annoying? Sure. Expected? Definitely. What I didn't know, what no one could have known, was that this RV would become the center of a neighborhood meltdown, that Karen would treat it like an act of war, that she would try to tow a federal surveillance vehicle, that she would broadcast her downfall live, with jazz music playing in the background, and that she'd turn what should have been a quiet, uneventful stakeout into one of the wildest operations of my entire law enforcement career. I didn't come here to start a fight. This wasn't about her. It wasn't about the HOA. It was about something bigger, something dangerous. But then Karen stepped in, and she made herself part of the story. She had no idea who I was. She had no idea what this RV was for. And by the time she found out, it was too late for her. Karen wasn't just a neighbor. She was the self-appointed clipboard-carrying queen of the cul-de-sac. Technically, she was the HOA president, but in her mind, she was the final authority on every blade of grass, every mailbox color, and every festive light that dared twinkle past January 1st. Her daily patrols started at 6 a.m. sharp. She walked the neighborhood like a military general inspecting troops, head high, ponytail tight, clipboard pressed to her chest like a sacred artifact. She had color-coded pens, red for violations, blue for warnings, green for what she called friendly suggestions, which were basically just pre-warnings. You knew she was near when dogs stopped barking and grown men pretended to water lawns at 6:05 in the morning. She caught everything. Trash cans placed 12 inches too far from the curb, grass half an inch over regulation height. One guy even got a letter for excessive gnome clustering. And then came my RV. It didn't fit her aesthetic, or her rules, or her illusion of control. The moment she saw it, her world tilted. She didn't know who owned it, didn't know how long it would be there, and worst of all, she didn't approve it. She started asking questions to anyone, everyone. Have you seen that camper on the corner? Is it one of the new renters? Do they even have HOA clearance? Nobody had answers, and that, more than anything, drove her nuts. Karen didn't like mysteries. She liked categories, rules, forms, people who apologize when she gave them a warning about flagpole angles. But the RV didn't apologize. It just sat there, still, silent, unknown. And so she turned to surveillance. She brought out a drone. Yes, a drone. It buzzed over the street like a mechanical hornet, dipping low to scan the RV's roof like it was hunting for heat signatures. I watched her from my window as she clutched a little tablet, steering it around like she was directing air traffic. And what she didn't know, the RV filmed her right back, every movement, every word, documented, archived, forwarded. I sent one of the clips to Agent Colby. His reply, "Who is this woman and why does she look like she calls the cops on lemonade stands?" I knew then Karen was going to be a problem. Not for me, for herself. She was playing checkers. I was playing something else entirely. She thought she was policing the neighborhood. She had no clue she was stepping directly into a federal surveillance op. And she was about to make it personal. The next morning she came back. Same outfit, same sunglasses, same posture like she ran the Pentagon. But this time, She brought paperwork. She marched right up to the RV with a neon orange sticker in one hand and her gold monogrammed clipboard in the other. It read Notice of Violation in bold block letters with an exclamation point. Of course, she slapped it on the windshield. Only it wasn't a windshield. It was a reinforced, bullet-resistant camera housing, thermal shielded, motion activated, and wired to alert every federal server we had. The moment that sticker made contact, the RV reacted. Inside, my secondary monitor lit up red. Node obstructed, federal override initiated. Then, outside came the voice. Calm, male, artificial. Federal vehicle. Do not obstruct. Karen jumped back like it had hissed at her. She clutched her chest like someone had just accused her of parking on the wrong side of the street, which, ironically, she had done twice last month. And me? I watched from inside, sipping coffee. Second mug, fresh brewed, I didn't even flinch. Karen, however, began a full-on meltdown. "This is intimidation!" she shouted, already going live on Facebook. Her arm extended like she was reporting from a war zone. "Attention Willow Ridge residents! There is a hostile vehicle on our block. I am being threatened for protecting our neighborhood." She waved her phone like it was a badge, walked in circles, referred to the RV as military-grade surveillance equipment disguised as a camper, which technically wasn't entirely wrong, but still. "This is not a home. This is an invasion," she said, voice rising. She zoomed in on the side vents, calling them concealed weapons. They were just air intakes. Karen didn't see a parked RV. She saw rebellion, chaos, the fall of Western order. I sent the stream to Agent Colby. His reply was immediate. She just called it a meth lab on wheels. I love her, but for all her screaming, for all her footage and threats, I didn't move. And that made her unravel, because Karen didn't want justice, she wanted control, and the RV didn't bow to her clipboard, didn't fear her HOA title, didn't care about her 3-pen filing system or drone flight paths, and neither did I. That night she left a note in my mailbox, no stamp, handwritten. "This is your final warning. Move the vehicle or I will handle it myself. Karen." She still had no idea who she was dealing with or what was coming next, but she was about to find out, the hard way. She came back on day 4 with reinforcements. Not people, not police. Paperwork. A rolled-up stack of HOA bylaws under one arm, clipboard in the other, and a face like someone just spilled wine on her white carpet. She didn't even hesitate, walked right up to the RV, looked around like she expected cameras, if only she knew, and peeled a giant neon orange sticker from her clipboard. "Immediate removal required" in all caps, with 2 exclamation points. She slapped it right onto the windshield. Except it wasn't the windshield, it was a reinforced sensor panel, bullet-resistant, weather-sealed, and wired straight into a federal alert system. The moment that sticker made contact, the RV reacted. Inside, my secondary monitor lit up red. Node obstructed. Federal override initiated. Then, outside came the voice. Calm. Male. Artificial. Federal vehicle. Do not obstruct. Karen jumped back like it had hissed at her. She clutched her chest like someone had just accused her of parking on the wrong side of the street, which, ironically, she had done twice last month. And me, I watched from inside, sipping coffee. Second mug, fresh brewed, I didn't even flinch. Karen, however, began a full-on meltdown. "This is intimidation!" she shouted, already going live on Facebook. Her arm extended like she was reporting from a war zone. "Attention Willow Ridge residents, there is a hostile vehicle on our block. I am being threatened for protecting our neighborhood." She waved her phone like it was a badge, walked in circles, referred to the RV as military-grade surveillance equipment disguised as a camper, which technically wasn't entirely wrong, but still. "This is not a home. This is an invasion," she said, voice rising. She zoomed in on the side vents, calling them concealed weapons. They were just air intakes. Karen didn't see a parked RV. She saw rebellion, chaos, the fall of Western order. I sent the stream to Agent Colby. His reply was immediate. She just called it a meth lab on wheels. I love her. But for all her screaming, for all her footage and threats, I didn't move, and that made her unravel. Because Karen didn't want justice. She wanted control, and the RV didn't bow to her clipboard, didn't fear her HOA title, didn't care about her 3-pen filing system or drone flight paths, and neither did I. That night, she left a note in my mailbox, no stamp, handwritten. This is your final warning. Move the vehicle or I will handle it myself. Karen. She still had no idea who she was dealing with or what was coming next, but she was about to find out. The hard way. She came back on day 4 with reinforcements. Not people, not police, paperwork, a rolled up stack of HOA bylaws under one arm, clipboard in the other, and a face like someone just spilled wine on her white carpet. She didn't even hesitate, walked right up to the RV, looked around like she expected cameras, if only she knew, and peeled a giant neon orange sticker from her clipboard. Immediate removal required in all caps, with 2 exclamation points. She slapped it right onto the windshield, except it wasn't the windshield, it was a reinforced sensor panel, bullet-resistant, weather-sealed, and wired straight into a federal alert system. The second that adhesive touched the surface, the system inside the RV lit up like a Christmas tree. Infrared cameras activated, node sensors detected obstruction, live feeds uploaded to 3 encrypted servers, and then came the voice. Neutral, calm, the same voice used on secure military bases. Federal vehicle, do not obstruct. Karen jumped back like the RV had barked at her. She looked around, flustered, arms twitching at her sides. Then she did what she always does when logic fails her. She doubled down. "I'm placing you under HOA citation," she shouted, like that meant anything. "This vehicle violates Code 7.1, unauthorized parking of oversized units." I didn't respond. The RV didn't move, and that silence, it made her unravel even faster. She whipped out her phone, started filming. Again. "This is Karen Thompson, HOA president of Willow Ridge Estates," she declared, pacing in front of the RV like it was a hostage situation. "There is an illegal vehicle parked on our block. It has refused to move. It has threatened me." She zoomed in on the orange sticker, then back to her own face, lips tight with righteous fury. "I'm doing this for the safety of our children," she said, even though there weren't any kids on our street under the age of 16. What she didn't realize was that her little video was being recorded from 4 different angles with crystal clear audio. Back inside, I flagged the footage and sent it straight to Agent Colby. His text came in 10 seconds later. "She just threatened a federal asset on camera. Incredible." I watched her stomp back to her house, fuming, still convinced she was winning, still unaware she just tripped a digital tripwire that made the DHS very, very curious about a woman with a drone, a clipboard, and too much free time. She thought she was dealing with an RV, but she just declared war on a command center. It happened at 7:01 a.m. on a Saturday, prime HOA harassment hour, the kind of morning when most people are just starting their coffee or pretending not to hear leaf blowers. But not Karen. No, she was already standing at the edge of my lawn, armed. This time she brought a bullhorn. I kid you not. A shiny white megaphone with a little sticker on the side that read Neighborhood Watch Official Equipment. I wasn't even out of bed when I heard her voice pierce through the neighborhood like a fire alarm wrapped in passive aggression. "If you do not move that illegal junkyard on wheels by sundown, I will have it forcibly removed." It echoed down the street. Birds scattered. A sprinkler paused mid-sputter. Somewhere, a dog started barking like it had seen a ghost. I pulled the curtain back. Yep, there she was, standing on her own lawn like she was giving a press conference. Neighbors started to peek out from behind their blinds. A few lawn chairs appeared. One guy even had a bowl of cereal. This wasn't a confrontation. This was a show. And Karen, she thought she was the main act. She raised the bullhorn again. "This is your final warning. Our community will not tolerate lawless behavior, oversized vehicles, or intimidating silence." I stepped out of the RV, still in my t-shirt and joggers. No badge, not yet. "Morning," I said, calm as ever. She blinked, then tilted her sunglasses down like she was trying to identify a suspect. "You live here?" she asked, pointing the bullhorn at me like it doubled as a weapon. I nodded. "This your vehicle?" she added, gesturing like she was commanding troops. "Yup." Her mouth twitched. She was waiting for fear, apology, backpedaling. Instead, I sipped my coffee. Behind me, the RV quietly recorded every word. And what Karen didn't know, what she couldn't know, was that federal agents were listening in, right then, right there. Live feed, audio clean. "Then let me be clear," she snapped, bullhorn still in hand. "You are violating several HOA policies, and I am well within my authority to order this vehicle towed." I smiled, not smug, just amused. "You might want to hold off on that," I said. And why's that? She snapped, squaring up like we were about to duel. I took a step forward. Because you're not just messing with a neighbor, Karen, I said. You're interfering with something much bigger than your clipboard can handle. She opened her mouth, probably to accuse me of threatening her with vague HOA codes. Instead, I raised my hand and tapped my watch once. That's when the RV lit up behind me. A low hum, blue indicator lights flickering to life, cameras swiveling, adjusting. Karen stumbled back. What is this? I leaned in just slightly. This is federal property. She froze, and for the first time since I moved in, Karen had nothing to say. Karen wasn't done. If anything, the silence after our confrontation made her more dangerous. She couldn't argue with me. She couldn't tow the RV, and she definitely couldn't explain the blinking blue lights to her HOA handbook. So she did what people like Karen always do when the facts don't work in their favor. She threw a rally. Flyers went out the next morning, stuffed in mailboxes, taped to lampposts, even slid under doors like she was running for mayor of Delusionville. Emergency HOA Town Hall, defending our neighborhood from unauthorized threats. She booked the community center, rented folding chairs, ordered a fruit platter that no one touched. And then she stood at the front of the room in a patriotic blouse, microphone in hand, and called me a clear and present danger to Willow Ridge Pace. It was surreal. She played edited footage from her Facebook Live video, complete with dramatic music in the background, something orchestral and unsettling. She paused the video just as the RV's alert activated, then stared into the crowd like she was presenting evidence at The Hague. This vehicle has surveillance capabilities. It's recording us, watching our families, our children. There it was again, the imaginary children she always invoked when she needed sympathy. We've had strange cars on the street. I've seen men in dark clothing walk by at night. Coincidence? She let the word hang in the air like a bad perfume. Some of the usual suspects nodded, Karen's inner circle, the ones who complained about Halloween decorations and dogs off leash. But the rest, they looked tired, uncomfortable. Mr. Brenner, the retired Navy vet, actually scoffed out loud. He muttered something that sounded like, "It's a parked vehicle, not a spy balloon." But Karen powered on. She unveiled a printed petition, called for immediate HOA authorization to remove the RV by force if necessary. She even tried to appoint an emergency compliance task force, which, in normal terms, meant more people with clipboards and bad judgment. Luckily, there were rules. HOA changes needed a vote, and Karen didn't have the numbers, but she had something else now, paranoia, and that was more infectious than any virus. She walked out of that room like she'd been handed a mandate, like she was leading a resistance against the world's most polite invasion. And me, I watched the whole thing unfold on the RV's interior monitors. 2 agents laughed the entire time. She thinks she's taken down the deep state, one said, but all she'd really done was put herself dead center in its sights. I woke up to the sound of hydraulics. Not birds, not sprinklers, hydraulics. A tow truck, big, loud, rusty, backing into position like it was prepping to yank a tank out of a ditch. And standing right in front of it, arms crossed, lips pursed, wearing a blazer over her tracksuit, was Karen. She wasn't messing around anymore. She'd called in backup. The driver looked confused, nervous. He kept glancing at his clipboard, then at Karen, then back at my RV like it might explode if he touched it. Smart guy. I stepped outside. Karen turned with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Good morning," she said, as if we were about to discuss garbage pickup. Behind her, the tow truck's metal arm began to lower, lining up with my front axle. "You can't do this," I said flatly. "Oh, I can," she chirped. "The HOA has emergency enforcement authority when it comes to unauthorized long-term vehicle storage, Section 12.3. She even had a laminated printout. I didn't move, didn't raise my voice, didn't need to. I just glanced at the RV. It woke up. Blue lights blinked to life along the sides. A low siren whooped once. Sharp, clear, unmistakably official. The tow truck stopped mid-motion. Karen blinked. The driver froze. Then came the external speaker system. Calm, level, unignorable. "Warning, this vehicle is under federal jurisdiction. Unauthorized towing is a violation of Title 18, Section 111. Step away immediately." Karen turned the color of her HOA binder. "What kind of bluff is this?" she snapped. That's when the rear panel of the RV flipped open, revealing a display screen, black background, white letters, Federal Command Vehicle, Do Not Interfere. The tow truck driver slowly backed away. Karen wasn't done yet. She pointed a finger like it was a sword. You can't just say something's federal. Anyone could print a sign. Sure, I said, pulling out my phone. But not everyone has Homeland Security on speed dial. I tapped once, put it on speaker. Command post, go ahead, came the voice on the other end. Karen's mouth opened, then shut. The driver climbed back into his truck like the asphalt had turned to lava. I watched as he backed out of the cul-de-sac without a word. Karen stood there, shaking. You can't just put a spy van in the middle of a family neighborhood, she yelled. It's not a spy van, I said. It's a command center. She looked around, noticed the neighbors on their porches, cameras out, recording, watching. Her kingdom was crumbling one siren at a time. She turned and stormed off without another word, and from inside the RV, Agent Colby's voice came through the internal channel, grinning through the static. Well, he said, that escalated beautifully. I gave her time. After the tow truck fiasco, Karen went radio silent for about 12 hours. A record, no drone, no clipboard, no early patrol. She was regrouping, plotting her next move, and I was preparing mine. The next morning, I stepped out of the RV, not in joggers, not in a hoodie, but in full uniform, sheriff's department, badge polished, radio clipped, nameplate shining under the morning sun. Karen was on her porch, mid-sip of something iced and overpriced. She froze. The cup stayed suspended halfway to her lips. Her jaw didn't drop, just tightened. A twitch at the corner of her mouth. That little flicker of panic when the reality finally lands. I locked eyes with her across the lawn. No clipboard, no bullhorn. Just silence. She set the drink down with both hands like her fingers weren't fully cooperating. And then she approached, each step slower than usual, measured, controlled, the kind of walk people do when they're trying very hard not to show fear. Good morning, she said, polite, crisp, too crisp. I nodded. She looked at the badge, then back to my face, then back to the badge again, like maybe it would vanish if she stared long enough. I didn't realize you were law enforcement. Most people don't, I said. I let it hang there. Because here's the thing. People like Karen don't respond to truth. They respond to status. She didn't care that she'd broken 3 different federal statutes. She cared that she hadn't seen the badge first. I wish you'd told me, she said, voice brittle. I wish you hadn't tried to tow a federal vehicle, I replied. She opened her mouth, closed it, then tried again. I was only trying to keep the neighborhood safe. I tilted my head. From what? She didn't have an answer. Just that vacant, overcaffeinated stare of someone who realized the room flipped upside down. I didn't know, she whispered. No, I said. You didn't, and yet you acted like you did. A long pause. Then she smiled, tight, fragile. Well, now that we've cleared things up, maybe we can work together. I do know a thing or two about community order. I didn't blink. Karen, I said quietly, you have no idea what you've stepped into. And for once, she didn't argue. She turned, walked away, slower than she'd arrived. And just like that, the power shifted. The clipboard queen had finally seen the sheriff. It didn't take long. The uniform changed everything. By noon, the neighborhood knew. Whispers started on the sidewalks. Phone trees lit up like Christmas lights. Karen's morning patrols turned into awkward stares from behind curtains. And then the questions began. Real ones, like why the HOA dues had gone up again last quarter, even though the park bench still hadn't been repaired. Why the community newsletter suddenly stopped listing board meeting minutes. Why Karen's nephew's landscaping company kept getting contracts, despite killing 3 people's lawns in a single summer. See, Karen had ruled with noise, volume, certainty, but now there was doubt, and doubt spreads faster than fear. By the end of the week, Mrs. Patel from 3 doors down had filed a formal inquiry into the HOA's spending. Mr. Brenner, the retired Navy guy, requested a line item audit. Even the fence lady who once threatened a neighbor over an unpainted gate hinge Started asking why Karen got free pressure washing for her driveway when no one else did. It was like the entire block had finally blinked, like they'd woken up from a trance. Karen tried to hold it together. She doubled her patrols, sent out emergency bulletins about mailbox height and non-regulation mulch, but it wasn't landing anymore. The same neighbors who used to nod politely now avoided her eyes. Some even smiled when I walked by. And here's the thing about people like Karen, they don't know what to do when the room stops clapping. She called an emergency HOA board meeting. Only 3 people showed up. 2 of them were her cousins. She posted a video online titled "The Real Threat to Willow Ridge." It got 12 views. 7 were from my agents. Inside the RV, we watched her unravel in real time. Agent Colby actually brought popcorn. "I've seen cartel accountants go down with more grace," he said. But for me, it wasn't about watching her fall. It was about what she'd built, the fines, the fear, the fake authority wrapped in laminated policies and sparkly clipboards. Karen didn't just abuse power. She created a system that let her do it, unchecked, unquestioned. Until now, the best part? I hadn't lifted a finger. All I'd done was exist. And suddenly that was enough to break her illusion. The RV hadn't moved an inch. But Karen, she was losing ground by the minute. And the neighborhood was finally starting to ask, who gave her all this power? And more importantly, what had she done with it? It started with a signature, Karen's to be exact. Big loopy cursive with a heart over the I in Thompson, stamped at the bottom of an HOA expense form titled Landscape Revitalization Initiative Q2. It seemed harmless until I looked closer. The contractor listed wasn't a real company. No website, no license, no business registration in the state, just a P.O. box and a phone number that went straight to voicemail. So I dug, and what I found was a tunnel, a web of shell companies, fake invoices, and recycled EINs, each one tracing back to a front used in a larger investigation. The name that finally showed up on the cross-check, Tony Delgado. The same Tony Delgado we'd been surveilling from the RV, 4 houses down. Suspected laundering money through home improvement contracts and crypto funneling. Low profile, high stakes. Karen had unknowingly handed him an access point, twice. He'd been paid for shrubs and pest control, neither of which had ever occurred. I pulled the invoices. The dates lined up perfectly with our flagged transaction spikes. Karen had approved them without hesitation. Probably didn't even glance at the line items. That's the thing about people obsessed with order. They rarely question the system because they think they are the system. But Delgado had seen that blind spot and exploited it. He funneled tens of thousands through HOA contracts, planted money like tulips across the entire neighborhood, and Karen, drunk on her own authority, waved it right through with her signature and a matching binder tab. I stared at the files in the RV, heart pounding, not with fear, but with something worse. Realization. She wasn't just a nuisance anymore. She was a liability. We had no choice. I sent everything to Agent Colby. Within an hour, 3 more teams were assigned to monitor her HOA activities. What started as surveillance on a drug-linked laundering ring had just grown a second front, one no one expected. And the best part? Karen still thought she was in charge. She had no idea her own paperwork was now part of a federal investigation. No idea that the budget report she proudly read aloud at meetings was sitting on a DHS desk in DC. Her mouth was writing checks. But Delgado was cashing them, and now the whole neighborhood was under a microscope. The RV didn't just park in front of her war zone anymore, it was embedded in it, and I had a front row seat to watch it all fall apart. By this point, we weren't just watching her, we were building a file. Every HOA notice she printed, every door she knocked on, every anonymous violation that showed up like clockwork every Thursday morning, all of it recorded. The RV's internal network had been logging everything since day one. Every time Karen marched past the window muttering about neighborhood values, she was broadcasting to federal servers. We had audio, we had video, we had timestamps, but that wasn't all. Our agents had started canvassing quietly, house by house, just neighbors, asking questions, listening. And that's when the floodgates opened. People talked, not loud, not angry, just tired. Tired of the fines, tired of the threats, tired of pretending their rose bushes were dangerous just to keep Karen from screaming at them on Nextdoor. Mr. Rivera got fined $150 for his car's bumper being visibly dented. Ms. Chen got cited for planting lavender without community harmony clearance. And get this, lavender was on Karen's own property. She'd planted it herself 2 years ago and just changed her mind. But the worst was the security patrol. That's what finally triggered the deeper check. Karen had hired a private outfit, TriWatch Security, fancy name, nice logo, black SUVs with flashing orange lights on top. But they weren't licensed, weren't insured, weren't even trained. Just two high school dropouts in matching polos driving around with clipboards and printed badges from Etsy. They weren't protecting anything. They were intimidating people, blocking driveways, taking photos, making vague threats about compliance. We ran the company registration. Guess whose name was on the bank account? Karen's brother. She'd awarded the HOA contract to her own family without a single vote. Conflict of interest didn't even begin to cover it. I brought it to Agent Colby. He just whistled and opened a new folder. Karen Thompson, active investigation. Everything we needed was already in our hands. The footage, the forged signatures on permit requests, the fake ballots on HOA measures no one remembered voting on. She'd been rigging her own little regime. And now we had the receipts, but we weren't rushing it. Karen didn't know she was being watched. She still walked past the RV every morning, giving it side-eye like it might roll away in shame. She still posted compliance updates on the community message board, still believed she could scare me out of town with a clipboard and a bullhorn. But inside the RV, the walls were covered in notes, maps, string lines, her kingdom, dissected in red ink and hard evidence. Karen thought she ruled the block. She had no idea she'd become the case. She couldn't help herself. Karen had been backed into a corner, and people like her don't retreat. They escalate. So when her fines stopped being paid, when neighbors stopped responding to her HOA emails, when someone dared to put a flamingo in their front yard and she couldn't do a thing about it, she snapped. And then she went live. Taking Back Willowridge, a neighborhood under siege. That was the title of the live stream. She used her personal Facebook page, but she promoted it like a press conference. Flyers on mailboxes, an email blast to every resident. Even little handmade posters stapled to community trees, because apparently federal surveillance isn't as concerning as a well-placed staple. She held the town hall on her driveway, set up a podium, brought out a Bluetooth speaker, and stood in front of the RV like she was facing down an invading army. She wore an American flag scarf and heels that kept sinking into the lawn. There were donuts, fold-out chairs, even a welcome banner that said, "We the property owners." The whole thing looked like a PTA meeting had collided with a conspiracy theory. I watched it all from inside the RV, so did Agent Colby, and two guys from the FBI who showed up just in time for coffee and chaos. Karen took the mic. She called me a threat to suburban freedom, called the RV a mobile fortress of surveillance oppression. She claimed it was blasting mind control frequencies into local cable boxes, said she'd done research. At one point, she held up a printout of a blurry screenshot from Google Earth. "This," she said, "is proof the government is targeting our lawns." She pointed at the RV behind her. "And today I am putting it on notice." That's when she reached into her bag and pulled out a giant red sticker, bigger than before, the kind of thing you'd see on condemned buildings. "Unauthorized structure. Remove immediately." She marched right up to the RV, raised her arm, paused for drama, and slapped it right across the side. That's when the lights came on. Blue pulses lit up the RV's perimeter. The rear screen flipped open again. Federal command vehicle, live recording active. And Karen, still smiling, she thought it was a bluff. She had no idea her entire stunt was being live monitored by 3 federal agencies. The FBI had flagged her stream the second she said the word sovereignty. Homeland Security already had a copy. DHS servers were capturing every word, every face, every timestamp. I watched her back away from the RV, waving to the neighbors like she'd won. Colby leaned in. "Well," he said, "that's obstruction of federal operations, documented in 1080p. Karen thought this was her final move. She didn't realize it was the final straw. It started 2 days later, early morning, no warning. Black SUVs rolled into Willow Ridge like a slow-moving thunderstorm. Federal agents in windbreakers and unmarked tactical gear fanned out across the cul-de-sac. Some went to Delgado's house. Others, straight for Karen. No sirens, no knocking. Just a polite knock on her door that said, "We already know everything." I watched from the RV as she opened it, wearing silk pajamas and full makeup, like she was expecting a camera crew, not a federal warrant. The agent handed her a clipboard, but this time, it wasn't hers. It was a subpoena. Then came the boxes. They took everything: binders, laptops, receipts. Her HOA files, color-coded and overstuffed, loaded into evidence crates one by one. The espresso machine, confiscated. Apparently, it had been purchased with community morale funds. Karen just stood there, frozen, still trying to smile, still trying to control the narrative. "This is a mistake," she said to the nearest agent. He didn't respond because it wasn't. By noon, her name was trending locally. The news headline read, "HOA president under federal investigation for fraud, obstruction, and ties to criminal shell contracts." Her face, mid-speech, mouth open, eyes furious, plastered across every station. Colby turned to me in the RV. "She always wanted attention," he said, sipping coffee. "Now she's got it." Meanwhile, Delgado was being cuffed 2 houses down. He didn't resist, didn't run, just looked across the street at Karen and muttered something I couldn't hear. Then shook his head, like even he couldn't believe she dragged herself into this deep. And the neighborhood? It watched. People came out with lawn chairs. Kids pointed from windows. Even Mr. Brenner, the retired vet, gave a slow nod like justice had finally mowed the lawn. Inside the RV, our screens lit up with real-time updates. Bank accounts frozen, communication channels flagged. Karen's fake security company dismantled. Turns out one of her nephews had been running fake parking patrols in 2 other neighborhoods, too. It wasn't just Karen's clipboard that was taken. It was her authority, her illusion, her power, gone. The next day, an emergency HOA meeting was called. Without her, they voted to suspend all policies she'd enacted in the last year, investigate all financial activity, and Karen, she tried to respond with one final Facebook post, something about deep state overreach and political targeting, but no one shared it, no one commented. She wasn't feared anymore, she was just noise. The clipboard queen had fallen, and all it took was one parked RV, a sheriff with patience, and the truth. Her little empire hadn't just cracked, it imploded. And the neighborhood? It finally took a breath. Court wasn't what she expected. There were no flags on the table, no sparkling gavel, no donuts in the hallway, just rows of chairs, cold fluorescent lights, and a judge who looked like he had 0 time for suburban melodrama. Karen walked in like she owned the place. Head high, blazer crisp, planner tucked under her arm like a weapon. She sat at the defendant's table like it was just another HOA budget meeting. Her lawyer looked like he'd been hired off a coupon app. Hair messy, suit borrowed, eyes screaming, "Please plead out." She didn't look nervous at first. She kept glancing around the courtroom like she expected applause, or at least a few sympathetic neighbors. But the gallery was nearly empty. 1 reporter, 2 residents. A woman who used to lead the garden committee sat near the back, arms crossed, not smiling. Then the judge came in, and the charges started. Fraud, obstruction of federal operations, unauthorized surveillance, conflict of interest, unlicensed business activity, misuse of HOA funds, and aiding a laundering scheme, unknowingly, but still. Each word hit like a stone tossed through her perfectly organized life. Her shoulders tensed. She adjusted her scarf, crossed and uncrossed her legs, checked her notes, even though they meant nothing here. This wasn't a community vote. There were no Robert's Rules of Order to save her. Just facts, evidence, and hours of video footage showing her placing stickers on a federal vehicle and issuing threats through a bullhorn. When the prosecution played clips from her live streams, she flinched. Especially the part where she declared herself the last line of defense against government infiltration. The jury didn't laugh, they just stared. When the judge asked if she understood the charges, she started to speak, something about being misled and protecting her community. Her lawyer whispered something. She stopped talking. And just like that, the power shifted again. From clipboard queen to cautionary tale. She wasn't sentenced that day. That would come later, but the court ordered a full audit of the HOA's finances under her leadership. She was stripped of any and all decision-making authority, barred from serving on any neighborhood board for life, fined heavily, and issued a formal injunction against contacting any of the current HOA members for purposes of influence or intimidation. In plain terms, she was done. On her way out, a local reporter tried to ask her a question. She raised her hand like she used to do when demanding silence in HOA meetings. No one listened. Outside, the wind knocked a few papers from her planner. She scrambled after them in heels that weren't built for chasing the truth. And for the first time, no one offered to help. The RV didn't move. It stayed right there in the same spot it had been parked since day one. Same matte black paint, same tinted windows, quiet, watchful, present. But the energy around it, that changed. Neighbors started waving when they walked by. A few even brought cookies. Kids stopped pretending it was haunted and started calling it the cool robot truck. One morning, I stepped outside and found someone had left a thank you note taped to the side. No name, just a line written in messy blue ink. You made us feel safe again. Karen's house? Sold. Fast. Rumor had it she moved 3 towns over, where she's taking time to reflect and working on a memoir called Fighting for Order. Self-published, obviously. The HOA board held a special election. Mrs. Patel won by a landslide. Her campaign slogan was simple: no more bullhorns. They rewrote the bylaws: no more surprise fines, no more fake permits, no more drones unless they're for fun or fireworks. People started gardening again, not because they were told to, but because they wanted to. A pink flamingo appeared in one front yard, then another, then 6 more. I didn't stop them. Didn't need to. The neighborhood had found its rhythm again. Not controlled, not policed, balanced. One afternoon, Mr. Brenner, the Navy vet, walked over and asked what exactly the RV did. I told him, enough to keep things quiet. He nodded. That's all we need. And he was right, because the truth is, peace doesn't come from rules scribbled on laminated flyers. It comes from presence. From knowing someone's watching, not to punish, but to protect. Karen never understood that. To her, power was something you used, something you flaunted. But real authority, it's quieter than that. It listens, it observes, and when it acts, it's not with a bullhorn, it's with purpose. We closed the Delgado case a month later. 12 arrests across 3 counties, multiple shell companies dismantled, hundreds of thousands recovered. It never would have happened without Karen. Not because she helped, because she made so much noise, she drew every eye to the one street we needed watched. In her effort to root out imaginary threats, she exposed a real one. I call that poetic. Now, when I look out my window in the morning, there's no clipboard pacing, no drone buzzing overhead, no shouting through megaphones about mulch color, just dogs barking, sprinklers ticking, someone playing jazz too loud 2 houses down. Life. Normal, imperfect, peaceful life. And the RV, still watching, just in case. So, what would you have done if Karen marched up to your driveway with a bullhorn and a clipboard? Would you have stayed quiet like I did, or fired up the RV sirens just to see her jump? Let me know in the comments. I read every single one. And if you enjoy watching HOA drama unravel in glorious slow motion, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that little bell. Because around here, the stories don't just end with justice. Sometimes they end with a flamingo revolution and peace in the driveway. Thanks for watching. See you in the next one.